Well, greetings and welcome to the Dividing Line. Just sort of came running in here. Thought I had more time than I actually ended up having. But we are here and you are there. This is the last week before a fairly lengthy little trip. And I turn that down a little bit there. There we go. And we're going to be heading back to Dallas, where over the next few days, it's going to be really cold, but by the time I get there, it's supposed to, at least looking at the weather stuff, be not as cold as it is going to be over the next few days. So I'm not too concerned about the cold weather on this particular trip, though I'm just barely dodging it. But anyways, that does mean that the schedule will get a little on the wonky side. And might be on different days, different times. You know, the app will let you know. You can follow us on X, stuff like that. You know, as long as we're still allowed on there. I'm telling you, the stuff that I'm seeing and thinking about, even if the midterms this year, if the socialists take the House in the midterms, I'm going to predict impeachment within 2 days they're taking office, and probably 4, 5, 6 different attempts at it over the course of the next 2 years. I mean, they did it before. They tried to impeach him after he left office. I mean, they were just so wild. Government will functionally shut down, except for minimal services. And we will be looking at a royal mess. And then if the national election goes that direction, then you're going to be looking at what we're seeing in Europe. And I just saw this this meme, and I have not had a chance to, and I don't know that I would have the time to do it anyways. But it's what's going on in Virginia. The Democrats took over in Virginia, and of course, perfectly honest with you, I don't trust any of the election results anymore. The stuff that I'm seeing regularly. The number of dead people voting, and not just the joking way we used to talk about that in Chicago, but actually, documented people, people who aren't citizens, all this stuff. The election, I have zero confidence in the election process in the United States, because how many billions of dollars did the Somalians get out of Minnesota? I mean, if the left is that corrupt, I mean, we just need to understand we have a very sizable population in the United States that wants to see this nation utterly destroyed. They want to see the end of the Constitution. They want to see the end of anything but their own power. And they are corrupt. They're the ones pushing gender transitioning and abortion and gay mirage and all this stuff. As soon as they have power, the stuff that we saw under Biden will look like child's play. X will be handed a ultimatum. You either jump on board with everything that we want to do. You get rid of the people we want to get rid of. You silence the speech we want to silence, or you're done. You will be destroyed. Full power of the U.S. government will come against you. And I don't think there's much that anybody can do about that. And so all the stuff we were talking about in 21 and 22, we got a little reprieve. But these people, just look at what's happening in Minnesota. Look at how these people are behaving. What are they going to do once they have power again? They're going to make sure they never, ever, ever have to relinquish it again. And so this meme that I'm looking at from Virginia. Now, Virginia used to be a good, solid Republican state, but if you're wondering how has it become Minnesota, It's the suburbs of Washington, D.C. It's the cesspool that is the professional political class. And they live out in the suburbs, and they just outnumber everybody else. I think most of Virginia is going to need to secede and join up with West Virginia to represent those people, because most of the people in Virginia don't believe these things. But assault weapons ban, new sales tax, a tax for every Amazon delivery, new car taxes, guaranteed illegal aliens free education, highway use fees, abortions up to birth, mandate racial bias training, make it illegal to hand count ballots. Well, why would we want to hand count ballots? Eliminate mandatory minimum sentencing for rape. Now, we're used to this kind of insanity in California, but eventually, these people multiply. Well, actually, they're not multiplying. That is the one, the one bright thing is, but they don't multiply by having children. They multiply by stealing yours. They multiply by controlling the the indoctrination system, which is not educational system anymore. It's an indoctrination system. And that's what we're looking at. That's what these people are all about. And it doesn't matter how obvious the corruption is. It doesn't matter how many billions of dollars. I'm starting to wonder how much of the national debt was actually simply stolen in just rampant corruption, politicians using that money to buy power, buy votes. It really starts making you wonder. We may be looking, under the rug in Minnesota, but California, Colorado, so many other places. If people start doing, if there were journalists left, there are no journalists left. Not in the mainstream media, anyways. If there were people that were willing to dig like they did in Minneapolis, can you imagine what percentage of that $40 trillion was complete fraud? Just sucking the blood out of the dying corpse. That's basically what you're looking at. And like I said, I did post on X. And I know, you're supposed to be a post-millennialist. I posted on X just a biblical citation from the Lord in Matthew chapter 12, where he's talking about the fact that a kingdom divided against itself, any kingdom divided against itself shall be made desolate. And any city or house divided against itself shall not stand. That's Matthew 12:25. And as I look around, as I see Tim Walz, who has always struck me as just the most slimy politician I've ever encountered, as I see what these people are willing to do, I mean, they sacrificed that woman. They wanted a human sacrifice. They have no concern for human life. They murder babies right, left, and center. They mutilate children. They push for medical assistance in dying. MAID is the new phrase that they use. They are the culture of death. And so kill off some of their followers to gain more power? Well, no problem at all. Let's see if we can't push that a little bit harder. And they're going to be pushing it hard. They're doing it right now. They want more shootings. They want absolute chaos. They want to bring the nation to its knees so that they can swoop in with their authoritarian system. And by the time people realize it, it's too late. It's done. It's over with. And there we go. Wait a minute. Scroll back. Got to look at this real quick. We are thankful for Pastor Ninja, that's Jeff Durbin, Brian Gunter, whose church I'll be speaking at the weekend of the debates in Dallas coming up here, and we have it on the website now, right? Dragon Slayer OG, don't know who that is, sorry. And other pastors working today in Atlanta to recruit co-sponsors for the Georgia Prenatal Equal Protection Act. They report that 3 new lawmakers have joined as co-sponsors on the legislation. So, yeah, I knew that Jeff was flying out yesterday to Atlanta, and they have a lot of co-sponsors on the legislation. So, Georgia, again, used to be a place where you could expect some kind of fundamental understanding of humanity and law and things like that. Not with Atlanta and places like that anymore. So, you keep fighting the fight, despite the fact that it seems, well, there he is again. I think he followed me in. You got one out there too? Okay. It just hasn't gotten cold enough this winter to kill him. And we're going to have a lovely summer. No, we're not. It's going to be ugly. Anyway, you keep fighting the fight. You keep speaking the truth. What this nation needs isn't revival. Revival is getting something alive again that once was. This nation needs resurrection, is what it needs. And we may be doing, I'm talking with Jason Wallace up in Utah. We're trying to put together a trip. It's not going to be all that many weeks between this trip and the next trip, which would be at the end of March, the beginning of April, up to the General Conference. And so one of the things we're thinking about doing is having a presentation, Jason and I basically, do we need another Constantine? Because there are people who are promoting the idea that what we really need is Emperor Constantine. Did you know, I've mentioned this before, the Eastern Orthodox view Constantine as a tremendous saint, equal to the apostles? There's a couple of people they use that phrase for, equal to the apostles. And Constantine's one of them. And there are a lot of people that are like, what we really need is a Christian emperor that doesn't get baptized until right before he dies, and actually dies as an Arian and helped to bring the empire to the position of kicking Athanasius out of his church 5 times and almost gave us an Arian religion. That's what happens when you have sacralism and you have a state church without Christ. And I don't care how many of these guys put out their little books and put out their webcasts. Christendom without Christ is just dumb. just keep that in mind. Christendom without Christ is just dumb. Christless nationalism. I'm sorry? Well, yeah, but it's just, all these guys going, we love sacralism. It's just, you don't know what you're talking about. You know nothing about history. You really don't. You can't deal with it. So we may be doing something up there on that particular subject. Pray that we're trying to set up a dialogue. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but we're trying to set up a dialogue that I really, really, really hope happens. I want to do it. But we'll see. And again, I have to be very circumspect in debates and stuff like that. Because of that. All that entails, that is the Second Nicene Council, 787, and icon veneration, and what does it mean to be apostolic? All that stuff needs to be first and foremost. Hi. Well, I am not ready to I'm not ready to graduate from the Shaolin Monastery. There are not too many people that have any idea why I just said that. Don't worry. I'm not not becoming Buddhist or anything like that. But I was trying to get that little gnat, and I missed. You know what it is there's so much air in your hand, and they're so light that when you try to grab it, it just pushes it out of the way. That's my theory, and I'm going to stick with it. That's all there is to it. So, anyways, good to see Jeff and Brian back there in Atlanta doing their thing, and we pray that Lord would use that to open hearts and minds to the murder of unborn children that continues. No nation that continues to murder those children in light of the clarity of the issue. I mean, with each day that passes, we have greater and greater imagery of life in the womb, greater understanding of the nature of that unique human being that is there. No excuses. None whatsoever. So any nation that knowing how a unique human life is formed, and we do, we now know the mechanics. It's still an amazing, miraculous thing. I mean, I feel sorry for modern man. I don't remember I think it is in there. I'm trying to remember where that went. Do I not have that back there? Look at that. I do not have a full collection of my books back there. I just realized this for the first time. I think I do in my office. I don't have my youth books back there. I don't have What's with the Dudes, the Door, and What's with the Mutant in the Microscope. My only two youth books written with Kevin Johnson back in the 90s. They did well, but youth books are not kept in print very long, I discovered. But I had a discussion in What's with the Mutant in the Microscope where I talked about how no matter how hard secularists try, when they talk about the complexity of life, they cannot help but use terms of awe, design, order, even though their fundamental worldview denies that any of that is actually real. It's just how we see things. And we may know so much more about the mechanics of how life is created, the amazing process genetically. We know much more about it chemically, hormonally, all that kind of stuff. And the sad thing is the secularist goes, see, we don't need God. We figured it out. And you're like, wait a minute. So you understand major portions of the process now, but you don't have a clue how it started. And it's so clearly designed and it's so clearly complex, but now you don't need God because you've figured out stuff that ancient man didn't have the technology to figure out. The hubris of modern man truly is an amazing thing to observe. It really, really is. So anyway, all of that, to go back to what Jesus was saying here, I got run down the gum stump there by the tweet that scrolled by that had the stuff about what's going on in Atlanta. But as I mentioned last time, we are living in a divided nation here in the United States. And I suppose on one side, it's better than living in some of the nations that you are in right now that are not divided. They are united in their detestation of God, His law, His ways, and you're already living in a situation where there are many Christians listening to this program, and at least you're still able to listen to this program. But there are many people, you want to be able to say some of the things that I'm saying, but you can't. I mean, when I think about the fact that I spent like 2 months in the UK in 2019, And I realize that's coming up on, it's over 5 years ago now. What has happened since then? I would not have the freedom to say things today that I said in 2019 in the UK. Just don't. I mean, you look at the nations that have the most arrests for social media posting, and I think there's one more than the UK. It has become a totalitarian dictatorship there. And it happens so fast. The current leadership there is corrupt and autocratic as you can get. And it's, I can sit here and say, I can't see how there's a way out for them. There always is a way out for them. There's a way out for every nation. There can be fundamental change in a nation, generally when disaster strikes. Generally when there's disease, famine, war, natural catastrophe, when the foundations are washed away, you get to rebuild. But most people don't want to see that happen. We're very comfortable with what we've got. We like our retirement plans and our houses and our comforts. And all that stuff, folks, all of that stuff is up for grabs in the not too distant future. Just write it down. Write it down. Now, could something happen between now and 2028 that will fundamentally change the landscape? Well, maybe on an election cycle type level. Yes. But what needs to happen in the world? No matter what you try to say the answer is, I've got these, you've got these Christless nationalists who are saying, hey, 10 years from now, 12 years from now, blaspheming Christ will be illegal. We're just going to get it done. How about you start with stopping the blasphemy of Christ that is abortion? Maybe? Oh, yeah, we're going to get that. Really? How come you guys aren't the ones doing the stuff that Jeff and Brian and others are doing there in Atlanta? Where are you? Oh, too busy planning your next Trash World conference, maybe? Too busy putting out books on religious movements that don't actually exist, maybe? Getting your clicks, getting your follows, getting your Patreon paycheck, maybe? Yeah, you guys are MIA. You're out cosplaying in the forest with your knights and armor and big old swords and maybe stuff like that. But the battle's going on right now. And you want to say that, in a short period of time, you're not going to be able to blaspheme Christ in the United States. A nation that continues to murder unborn children, mutilate born children, blaspheme marriage, is blaspheming Christ. Isn't that significantly more important than if someone says words that you want to censor their speech? Well, that's because we're going to have a new Constantine. And like I said, when we showed the graphic last time with the guy, am I making it up or did that guy look like Trump? Yeah. Oh, of course it was on purpose. With the Cairo and the sword and the cross and all the rest of this stuff, and it's like, really? I mean, this guy, this administration has been slowly reestablishing funding for Planned Parenthood even after it was canceled. He's not really pro-life. He does not have a worldview to be able to understand the sanctity of human life in that way. And from his perspective, that's done. He gave us Roe. He gave us the Supreme Court justices. And so from his perspective, don't bother me with it anymore. And the, what do they call it? The Office of Faith or something like that? Yeah, you're going to get a lot of important stuff coming out of Paula White and all that kind of stuff. Craziness, absolute craziness. So once again, any kingdom divided against itself shall be made desolate. It's interesting. That was my translation. And the term desolate is related. It comes directly from the word for a wilderness or a wasteland. It shall be made a wasteland. And you think about all the work that preceding generations put into building what we have here in the United States and in other Western nations. The people that have invaded, and it has been an invading army aided by the traitors. I think Joe Biden and all of his crew guilty of absolute treason. Ilhan Omar, AOC, they're traitors. Every single one of them. They will sell the United States for cash. And it could be Somalian cash. It doesn't matter what it is. All these folks, they don't build. They just destroy. They burn, they destroy, they don't build. They don't build anything up. They don't know how to. And any kingdom divided against itself shall be made desolate, shall be made a wasteland, a wilderness. And any city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And so whether it's a city, whether it's a house, whether it's a nation, without the gift of God's unifying grace, it's done. And every single one of you that answers that you're so down, look at the history of the church. How many nations, kingdoms, and empires have risen up and then are no longer there since Christ's resurrection? A lot. A lot. And that means if God had his people in the vast majority of those places, there have always been generations, maybe for a short period of time, maybe for a long period of time, but there have always been generations that had to deal with living in a nation that was under God's judgment. Because there's nothing in postmillennialism. I'm going to find you. There is nothing. I'm going to have to get one of those little ultraviolet lights, and you'll hear a little, a little zap, a little zapper. We're going to get a zapper in here. When God has the freedom to demonstrate his holiness by judging sinful nations, and that has nothing to do with whether Christ is on the throne, whether he's reigning, whether it is God's intention to, in time, bring the gospel so that the nations stream into Jerusalem seeking God's law. Ask and I'll give the nations as your inheritance. Some say, well, it's only spiritual. Okay. What if it's both? None of that in any way denies that there are periods of time when God demonstrates his holiness by destroying sinful nations and empires. And so don't sit there and go, you're being inconsistent. No, I'm not. I'm being very consistent. And I recognize that there have been generations where Christians have been called to live in the midst of judgment. And that means, and I'm preaching to myself, that means the more we love our stuff, the more we love our comforts, the less likely it is that we're going to be able to stand in the gap. I get it. I hear it. I'm preaching to myself, preaching to you. You may not like being preached to. And look, I admit that those words hit me, and if they hit you, they probably hit all of us. But yeah, I do pray for what's coming in the future, and pray we'll be prepared. I know the only foundation we can stand on is to continue to stand upon holding to the view of Scripture that Jesus himself had. In the midst of all the complexity, there is an empty tomb in Jerusalem. That's the center point of history. And when everything else gets stripped away, there are certain non-negotiable realities. And this is a created universe. The complexity of life clearly demonstrates the existence of a creator. And when you look at what has happened in history, there is only one person that has impacted the entire course of human history. And you can't go to his grave. So, we've criticized those who have reduced Christian apologetics to just a defense of the general historical reliability of the resurrection. That has never, ever, for me, been a denial that the resurrection isn't. I've never been saying that the resurrection isn't the center point of history. It is. Everything pointed forward to it. Now everything points back to it. And that's going to be something you're going to need to hold on to when, scriptures talk about shaking of the world, shaking the foundations, so that which is certain may stand, but everything else falls over. We haven't even begun. We haven't even begun. But when the shaking happens, yeah, it's gonna be amazing. Yeah, I just seeing a lot of stuff from around the world, Australia, European Union. Man, the Brussels hates Europeans. Isn't it amazing? Of course, the socialists in our country hate Americans. So they're the same breed. It just seems that the European ones stink worse. It's just, and they're so schmarmy. They're just they smile and it's just it's difficult to listen to them even talking. And I guess the WEF is doing its thing right now, and that's a whole other thing we won't get into right now. I had not mentioned this guy in forever. I mean, I didn't look, but maybe you could. If you could hit the transcripts tab. When was the last time I mentioned Dr. Kevin M. Young? I mean, I think it's been over a year, maybe even longer. I mean, I just sort of figured the guy had finally gotten a life or became a Buddhist or something and just was off doing his thing. I just, I'd sparred with the guy, and there was another guy too, the guy in Austin, who's just a mirror image of him. I saw someone, he had posted something about, oh, that's right, the guy in Austin, he had said that if your pastor works for ICE, you need to get a different church. And I saw someone responding to him appropriately. But all of a sudden, popped into my feed this exchange between Julio Rodriguez and I think it's because Julio tagged me. He had said something to this Kevin Young, and I don't follow him, don't want to follow him, the Kevin Young guy. But then I got tagged into it. And Julio had said, did you dodge James White debate? And Young responded, no, Jim did, too scared of a meal. Now, for those of you, again, this is quite some time back now. This guy is a wild-eyed leftist, theologically speaking. Claims to be an expert in biblical languages and church history. Oh, well, good. Pro-LGBTQ and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And so I'm like, hey, you claim expertise in the areas where I'm a professor. So how about we debate? And he's like, well, if you will have dinner with me as your brother before we do a debate. And I was like, but the whole point of the debate is you're not my brother. You're a false teacher. And the debate would be to demonstrate that you're presenting false teaching. Nope. Unless you're willing to have a dinner with me as with a Christian brother, then I won't debate. And I'm like, so in other words, I have to actually admit that you're right to get the opportunity to prove that you're wrong. Okay, right. And it was non-negotiable for him. So I responded to what he said. I said, fact, Young demanded I accept his position as a Christian brother as the starting point of any debate, i.e., I had to admit defeat before beginning. He refuses to debate, for he knows his position is indefensible. And he responded, that's just a lie, and la, 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 la. And then he just deleted all that stuff and posted something else no one could respond to. So there are some pretty amazing people on X. And the people on the left, there is no reasoning with them. There's just nothing there to reason with. And it doesn't matter whether it's political, theological, whatever else it might be. They're just that's how they are. And it is an amazing thing to observe. Now, let's talk a little bit. Does your church have a security team? I don't even remember that being an element of discussion back in the 80s, at North Phoenix. I mean, there were a couple of interruptions, just some crazy people. They knew that we were on TV. And so I remember once a guy standing up and started yelling about something. And a bunch of deacons just descended on him and grabbed him by the arms and dragged him out of the place. And he kept yelling and things like that. I think that only happened once, maybe twice in all the years that I was there. But I don't think there was a security team type thing. No.
By the way, the question you asked earlier, we're thinking October 23rd, 2023.
Wow. Okay. Almost 2.5 years ago. I mean, this guy, I evidently live rent-free in his head because, well, there are certain people that I've just decided the best thing to do is to just starve them of the oxygen of responding to them. And what happens is when I ignore them for a lengthy period of time, eventually they have to try to start something. And that's what this guy did, obviously. But there are other people like that, and who remain nameless at the moment. But yeah, that's a long period of time. Thank you for that information. I appreciate that. Anyway, my church is the home church of End Abortion Now. And we've had protesters, and they're just people that, because of the large platform that the church has and the number of extremely controversial topics that are addressed and things like that. Yes, we definitely have a security team, And let's just say there's a lot of heat. There's a lot of heat in that room at any given time. And partly just because of who we are and things like that. But there's obviously reasons to be aware of why people would want to try to interrupt services. So everybody knows, most everybody knows what happened this past Sunday in St. Paul. Now, Minneapolis, St. Paul are called the Twin Cities. I was born just outside of Minneapolis, actually. And, I've even heard the name of the county that I was born in, because I have to fill that in when I'm doing passport stuff. I've even heard that recently as being one of just a hot spot of incredible corruption, Somali corruption, fraud, all this kind of stuff. But in a Southern Baptist church that Joe Rigney helped to found, was one of the first pastors, and it may have been the first pastor. I think said he was pastor there for 8 or 9 years. In St. Paul, on Sunday, the rumor got out, and I haven't actually seen the rumor substantiated. I haven't seen it denied. Excuse me. But I also haven't seen it substantiated that one of the elders, one of the teaching elders, one of the pastors, works for ICE, is a law enforcement officer. And so the rumor goes out that that's the situation, that's who this person is. And so a group of paid professional rabble rousers, let's just admit that's what these people are. I think Meg Basham did a story yesterday about one of the main guys, one of the videos of this interrupted service. They stand up, they mentioned the woman that was shot, say her name, the lesbian allegedly married to a woman, even though some people say, well, they weren't actually married, they were just living together, blah, blah, blah. When she was first shot, they had all these nice pictures of her, with hair, and she's a poet and a mother with young children. They didn't mention the 3 divorces, the lesbianism, the butch haircut, all the rest of that stuff, because they don't want to touch that, because there's still enough people in the nation that understand what marriage is that would interrupt what they're trying to accomplish. Anyway, Renee Good, say her name. They're chanting, all this stuff. And then Don Lemon, I mean, this guy has been all over the map. I mean, he reinvents himself all the time. And evidently, he's in there with them, and he's trying to interview the pastor, and he obviously knew they were going to be doing this. And he just happened to be walking by, right? Yeah, sure. And so they shut the service down. There's this rather touching video where you see a dad comforting his daughter, I think it is, who's scared by these people that have all of a sudden stood up in the middle of her church service and are yelling and screaming at her. And Don Lemon's running around, white privilege, and they're all racists, and they're all blah, 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 and all the rest of this kind of stuff. That could happen to anybody. That could happen to any church. None of these paid rabble rousers. Because like I said, Meg Basham, one of the videos, there was this guy in the video, and she tracked down his face. This is not the first church that he has invaded and interrupted. He's a professional, paid agitator, activist, protester, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the big thing you're supposed to be doing today, you're supposed to, be showing your great morality at. whether it's Gaza and the Palestinians or ICE and defending pedophiles and all the rest of that stuff, whatever it is. He's there because he's getting paid to be there, to yell and scream mantras he doesn't actually believe or care less about. That's what a lot of these people are all about, and that's who they were. Now, if nothing happens to these people, that is going to become the normative activity of the left. If they get away with it, and there's video everywhere, and you don't get to wear masks anymore. People can get away with stuff when everybody's running around wearing masks. Now you actually look weird again wearing a mask. That'll change. But it would not be difficult to identify all these people. There were so many people videotaping this stuff. Videotaping. I guess we just have to say recording. There's no... Where do you put the tape? I'm not sure. Yeah. yeah. How does it fit in there? Hey, a lot of us remember tape cartridges like that. And yeah. Anyway, so this took place this past Sunday. There's all sorts of social discussion about it. I'm going to be really interested to see what happens next Sunday and see if this starts promulgating. I wonder if it won't become more popular as we get toward the election, where you want as much social unease as you can get. That's how this side produces capital for themselves. So the pastor really tried to handle it as best he could. Don Lemon's all of a sudden in your face with a professional camera crew, throwing stuff at you. That is not, folks, that is not easy to deal with. I don't care who you are. Something gets thrown at you you're literally at the beginning of a sermon, I think. And all of a sudden you've got cacophony of voices and everything's coming apart. And here's Don Lemon with professional cameramen that had no idea this was going to be happening. They were all a part of it, obviously. And they're under investigation. Yes, the Department of Justice is looking into it, and there's a Ku Klux Klan Act, and there's a FACE Act. It is true that the Biden administration threw a, 69-year-old grandma in prison for silently praying outside an abortion clinic door for obstructing access to an abortion clinic. So you can go to jail for praying outside an abortion clinic, but you can bust into a church and stop the services and chant leftist mantras, and you'll be just fine. You'll never be arrested. You won't have a record. Remember Lady Justice with the scales? Blindfolded? Where'd that come from? That came from a Christian worldview. That came, well, oh boy, I almost used the hyphenated heresy. Oh! That is a concept based in the Old Testament law, the Mosaic Code, regarding trial, accusation, innocence, guilt, that is then carried into the Christian scriptures and into the Christian worldview. That's where it came from. That's why she has a blindfold on. Because there's supposed to be justice being done. Every corruption of the legal system is a lifting of that blindfold. And if you can chuck grandmas in prison for praying in closing down a abortuary, and you won't even touch these people who brazenly interrupt and undoubtedly, in essence, end a worship service. Religious freedom is done. Any kind of ordered culture is done. Law is done. Everybody will know there's one standard for these people, there's another standard for these people, and the judiciary, the legal system is utterly corrupt. Why even continue to play the game? I mean, it's sort of like, I've had a lot of people say this, and it's true. Once you see that the government gives away billions and billions and billions of dollars just simply to create voting blocks in corruption, graft, bribes, simple, straight up theft, really makes it tough to write that check out in April, doesn't it? It really makes it tough for you to look at that W-2 and go, man, look how much of what I earned was taken forcibly from me. And then to realize the people doing that don't give a darn if all that money is given to some Somali fraudster. They don't care. Why should I pay my taxes? You don't care. The payment to Caesar is based upon the idea that Caesar has this authority. These people, what authority do they have? They're so corrupt. Any authority they have, they bought. It's amazing. It really, really is. So anyways, during COVID, there was a lot of discussion about, well, what's the function of the church, the function of the local church, the function of having regular services, having the ordinances, the sacraments, and the relationship of the freedom to be able to do all those things to the government. Lots of sermons were preached, lots of disagreement took place, all that stuff. That's true. But now the question is, what do you do when these people show up at your door? Or it did seem to me like some of them had already snuck in. I didn't sit there and watch every single video I could find. And most of the videos start after everything is already blown up. You know, people are standing up and they're yelling and blah, 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 blah. But it looked to me like some had already snuck in so that they could immediately stand up and join the organic protestation where they're all chanting the same thing. So what do you do in that type of situation? I mean, what's the appropriate level of force that can be used? I mean, I just remember very clearly that guy at North Phoenix years and years ago, because I remember because I was up in the choir, so I think it was a Sunday night maybe. And I just remember, one big deacon put one under one arm and one on the other arm. And they just dragged him. His feet were dragging on the ground. They just dragged him out. He wasn't going to go voluntarily. What do you do? I mean, we've got enough guys that if a group showed up, they'd have a hard time getting in. But what if they've already snuck in because they've come in as single? And they're... what?
Come in, they get in the middle of the pews.
Right.
So you got to climb over people to get to them. You got to climb over people to get them out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So, this isn't something that we had to think about a whole lot. I mean, we thought about not protestations, but we thought about why we continue to meet. And we did continue to meet. We never stopped. There were only a few churches in the valley that could say that. But we were thinking about, what is the command to the church? And now the question is, how does the church defend itself? Because these people right now are not acting violently in the sense of trying to hurt our children, hurt our wives. They're just being a nuisance and trying to disrupt the service. So, is it their intention, though, to try to get it to become violent? Because that's what that side wants. They want violence. They want anarchy. That's what they desire. That's what they're going for. So, how do you avoid that? What is the appropriate response? There's going to be a lot of thinking about that. Yes, sir?
Well, I'm watching those videos and I'm thinking to myself, I've known a few old church ladies and I know exactly what they would have done. My grandmother wasn't a church lady, but I know what she would have done. And she would have reached up and she would have grabbed them by the ear with a death grip, and she would have just walked them right out the door, not letting go, and they would have been screaming the whole way, and she'd have kicked them in the fanny on the way out. That's what the old church lady would have done. But hey.
Yeah, well, some of them that I saw were not the smallest people I've ever seen. So, yeah. But yeah, these are not theoretical questions right now. And I see all the folks out there, on Twitter. Oh man, I'll tell you, we're locked and loaded, ready to go. Rah, Yeah, that's the first thing you want to do. You get somebody that interrupts stuff and you just blow them away. It's just boom, gone. Yeah, well, you're going to be starting a prison ministry real fast. And here's the problem. In a lot of places, it might be completely justified. You may be completely justified in stopping a life-threatening situation, but because of the corruption of the government, you will still end up in prison. And I do not trust the judiciary to know the difference between those situations. We have a corrupt judiciary. We have corrupt judges, and they cannot be trusted to do what's just because they have no basis for it.
What I did not understand when I was watching this is if you go back a year, you go back 2 years. It wasn't that long ago a guy plowed into an LDS ward,
right,
and killed people, burned the place to the ground.
Right.
It's like these protests where they block the road and then they come around and try to force the door open or break the glass.
Right.
In Arizona, that's called carjacking.
Yeah.
And you can shoot the guy.
Yeah.
Because you have you're in fear for your life. You have no idea. So if you're thinking about doing something like this, what is going through your mind as to whether or not the people inside are going to confuse you with someone who is there to actually do murder?
I don't know.
And what is how in the world can you carry through with that it's just there's a mentality here that baffles me, that you're willing to actually go that far and maybe have your life taken. Is it really worth that?
That's what they want. They want murders. That's what George Floyd was. They want murders. It doesn't matter if there was anything to it. They just want murders. And murders for the cause. That's how you spread anarchy. And that's what they're trying to do. They're spreading anarchy. Anyway, something to be thinking about. I'm sure that most elder boards and most leadership are already thinking about it. And, at our church, we have specific guidelines and things like that. But I'm sure there's been some further discussion and needs to be further discussion along those lines as well. So, sorry about sort of wandering around today. I sort of felt that's what we were doing. It's been an odd period of time, and it just seems to me like with what's going on, we're going to see more and more of these types of situations that will press us to think more and more on how to be consistent. And let's think about it together. Anyways, it's always good to hear other perspectives and think about it together. So, thanks for watching the program today. My plan is to be here on Thursday Tomorrow, I will be doing Iron Sharpens Iron with Chris Arnzen. And I begged him. He contacted me. We're going to be talking about the interracial marriage discussion that took place. I started listening to it, and I begged him, please, I cannot spend more than an hour on this mess. And so we're going to do an hour on that, and then an hour on upcoming debates. So the Unitarian debate in Dallas, the debate with Craig Truglia on Second Nicene Council. And so the second hour will undoubtedly be more enjoyable for me anyways. So tune in Iron Sharpens Iron tomorrow. And Lord willing, we'll be here on Thursday and then head out over the weekend. And so next week, on the road at the beginning of the week, and then in Dallas after that, hopefully get good connectivity there and be able to do programs while we're there in the Dallas area. So thanks for watching the program. Pray for safe travel, and we'll see you next time. God bless.